Welcome back to Steel City Sports. So today we're going to be ranking the last 10 number one overall picks in the NFL. If you didn't see my NBA version of this video, I'll put a link in the description to that. And like I said in that one, we're not going to rank the most current number one overall pick, which in this case would be Bryce Young. I don't think it's fair to rank them based off of just 1 year. So we're going to start with 2022 and work ourselves all the way back to 2013 and rank those 10 guys. And something that I found fascinating about these 10 players are only one of them has won a Super Bowl. And it's like, usually when you land the number one overall pick, it's such a coveted thing. It's like, oh my God, we're changing the trajectory of our franchise around. But historically, number one overall picks, very few of them actually lead their teams to Super Bowls. I just found that kind of an interesting stat. So let's get into the actual list. Starting off the list at number 10, we have Travon Walker, the first overall pick from the 2022 draft. I still to this day don't really understand why he was drafted number one overall. Like that entire draft process, Aiden Hutchinson was like the clear-cut number one guy. And it wasn't until like draft day that Travon Walker, there was a buzz of him going number one overall. It kind of felt like the Jags were they wanted to be different. They threw a curveball and took him. I think Aiden Hutchinson is definitely the better player as of right now. But it's not to say Walker's a bad player. You know, in his sophomore year, he put up 10 sacks. So I think he's going to go on to be a very productive player in the NFL. I just think there are some guys in that draft, especially that were drafted right after him, like Hutchinson, like Stingley, like Sauce. Like there are better defensive guys that went after him that were in that draft. And that was just a weird overall draft in general because it was a very defensive-oriented draft. But I think he's good. It's just, again, we know so little about him, and I just think there were better players taken after him. At number 9, we have Jameis Winston, the first overall pick from the 2015 draft. And Jameis just never really lived up to being a first overall pick. There was definitely talent there. There was definitely production from Jameis Winston, but he was never really able to just put it all together in terms of his decision-making, in terms of his, reads of NFL coverages. He was just never really able to solidify his game. To me, he felt like a very raw prospect and just never was really able to be that good of a quarterback. I never really considered Jameis an elite-level quarterback. And being a first overall pick as a quarterback, obviously there's a lot of expectations on you. And I felt like he had a lot of talent around him in Tampa, especially having Mike Evans and Godwin towards the later part of his Tampa tenure. He had some guys to throw the ball to in Tampa, and he could definitely sling it. He had the arm talent. It was just his reckless turnovers that really did him in. And he obviously had the infamous season of throwing 30 touchdowns, but also throwing 30 interceptions. So there was talent, too reckless. He's now like a backup. I think he's one of the better backups in the NFL, but being a first overall pick as a quarterback and you turn out to be a backup is obviously massively disappointing. At number 8, we have Eric Fisher, the number one overall pick from the 2013 draft. So this is a little bit before my time when watching the NFL, so I don't remember the draft process leading up to draft night. I started watching around 2015, 2016, so it's a little bit before me. So I don't remember the conversations being had around, you guys have to let me know if you were watching the NFL back then. Was he the consensus number one guy leading up to that? Because I find it just fascinating that an offensive lineman went number one overall in a draft. I get it. It's definitely an important position, especially in today's football where it's such a passing league, but it's still crazy because usually number one overall picks are either quarterbacks or high-end defensive line players. So to see an offensive lineman go that high is kind of mind-blowing to me. He had a good career. I don't think he had a great career. He made 2 Pro Bowls. He won a Super Bowl with them in, 2019? And like I said earlier, there was only one guy on this list who won a Super Bowl as a number one overall pick, and that was this guy, Eric Fisher. And I don't think he was ever really considered one of the elite offensive linemen in the NFL. He was definitely good. I'd definitely say he's above average as an offensive lineman. It doesn't really wow you at the position. So overall, had a good career. Just a weird pick that he was number one overall. At number 7, we have Jadeveon Clowney, the number one overall pick from the 2014 draft. Another good NFL player, but a guy that never lived up to being a first overall pick. He got off to a good start in Houston, especially towards the later part of his career in Houston. He had some really good years in 2018 and 2019 where him and J.J. Watt were just a monstrous wrecking crew duo. And then his career just took a weird turn where he bounced around from team to team. Like he was on Seattle for a little bit. I think he was on the Titans for a year, and then he was with Cleveland for 2 years. And it just wasn't really like... It looked weird. Like, it's like, is he going to be out of the league in a couple years? But now, this past season, he just had a career revitalization with the Baltimore Ravens, having 9.5 sacks. And this is the best he's looked, I think, since he's left Houston. And I'll be interested to see if he stays in Baltimore, just given their cap situation. But overall, a good player, just similar to some of the other guys we talked about, was never able to live up to that hype of being a number 1 overall pick. At number 6, we have Baker Mayfield, the number 1 overall pick from the 2018 draft. Baker Mayfield's another guy on this list that has had a really weird career path. Got off to, I think, a really good start in Cleveland, where as a rookie, he broke Peyton Manning's record for most touchdowns thrown by a rookie. And there were definitely ups and downs. Like, Cleveland was very chaotic in the Baker era, especially when you look at some of the head coaches he had, like, just complete morons. Like Hugh Jackson, that's a joke. Freddie Kitchens was one of the biggest disasters ever. It was very, very poorly managed while he was there in Cleveland. I think he was good, not great. I think had his best year in 2020 where he led the Browns to their first playoff win in a million years, and was actually really good in the second round against the Chiefs as well. They almost beat the Chiefs in the divisional round. But then obviously they decided to go on with Deshaun. They traded him away after 2021, and he bounced around from team to team. It looked like he's probably going down the path of Jameis, like where he's going to be a backup now for the rest of his career. He went to Carolina, lasted like 2 games there, went to the Rams, was there for like half a season, and then Tampa. He called Tampa. Tampa didn't call him, but he went there and had the best year of his career this past year. I think he threw for 30 touchdowns. I could be wrong on that. If I am, please correct me in the comments, but I'm pretty sure he did throw for 30 TDs and led them to a playoff victory over the Eagles. So definitely revitalized his career for sure. Similar to like what we said about Jadeveon Clowney, revitalized his career this year. Baker Mayfield's another number 1 overall pick that definitely did wonders for his career. And I think the difference this year than the Baker of past was he just grew up this year. Like, he always had the talent to be a really good quarterback in the NFL. It was the maturity issues that I think really stunted him. And this is the year where I think he was kind of humbled by what he went through, like bouncing from team to team, and he finally just focused on football, and it really showed. And I think he is one of the top 15 quarterbacks in the NFL right now. In terms of being a number 1 overall pick, definitely a letdown, especially when you look at some of the other quarterbacks in that draft, like Josh Allen, like Lamar Jackson. But I think he's a really good quarterback at this point in time. Kicking off the top 5, we have Kyler Murray, who was the first overall pick in the 2019 draft. And I admit up front, I'm a big Kyler guy, so maybe I'm biased towards him, but I still think Kyler Murray is one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the NFL from a talent perspective. One of the most poorly run franchises in the NFL, the Arizona Cardinals, got them to a playoff berth back in 2021. When you give the little guy a real team, he'll win you some damn games. Like, he can actually... He's one of the best, I think, just pure playmakers in the NFL at the quarterback position. When you talk about his versatility, getting out of the pocket, he's so fast, he's so hard to tackle because he's so elusive. And when you give him the weapons, he can showcase that arm. When he had DeAndre Hopkins, he was throwing bombs to him. Like, he has the arm talent. I think he's the complete player. Even though he's a smaller player, he just makes up for it in so many other ways on the football field. And, I think going into this past year, a lot of people, myself included, thought that he wasn't even going to be a Cardinal going forward. I thought he was going to sit out the rest of this year and they were going to tank and draft Caleb. That was kind of the conventional wisdom before this season started. However, he did come back. They were a little better whenever he played. And he showed you he can still win games. He's still extremely talented. It wasn't that long ago where it was most people in the NFL community regarded Kyler Murray as a top 10 quarterback. And I just don't really understand why that's no longer a common held opinion. I think a lot of it has to do with the off the field stuff, with the contract negotiations kind of got a little messy. He's known for liking to play video games a lot, but when you just look at the film tells you he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, and I will debate anybody on that. At number 4, we have Trevor Lawrence, the number 1 overall pick from the 2021 NFL Draft. I think the opinion of Trevor Lawrence right now is so bizarre because you just go back like a year from today's date, and most people would have told you Trevor Lawrence is easily a top 7 quarterback in the NFL. But after the weird year they had this year where they were like 8-3 and then finished the year 9-8, there's a lot of question marks around Trevor Lawrence, and he's no longer looked at as like a can't-miss prospect, you know? When he was coming into the NFL, he was viewed as a generational, like once-in-a-decade level talent at the quarterback position. We're talking about like John Elway, Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck level prospect. And the jump he had from year 1 to 2, I think, kind of confirmed that he deserved to be in that light, you know? Because the disaster that was his rookie year with Urban Meyer, his touchdown to interception ratio as a rookie was 11-17, which is bad. But the way he turned it around in year 2, I thought, okay, the hype is actually warranted. I think his touchdown to interception ratio went to like 28-5 or something really not good. Like, it's not exactly that, but it was a noticeable, massive improvement. He looked so much better. He led them to a playoff win over the Chargers, which I think is one of the best comebacks in the history of the NFL in a playoff game. To be down 24-0 at half and then win the game. But then year 3 happened, and he just didn't get any better. And that's, I ultimately think, why people don't view him as highly anymore. Is because based on the jump he took from year 1 to year 2, you would have expected the jump from year 2 to year 3 to be astronomical, and I just don't think he grew much from that. So this is, I think, going to be a massive year for him, because not only is he trying to, get back on track with his career, but he also is going to be playing for a contract pretty soon here. At number 3, we have the number 1 overall pick from the 2016 NFL Draft, and that was Jared Goff. So as a rookie, looked like a flat-out, unmitigated bust. Looked terrible as a rookie with Jeff Fisher as his head coach. However, his sophomore year, they bring in a guy named Sean McVay, and it completely revitalized his career. He looked like a Pro Bowl-level quarterback. However, was still kind of limited, especially for what McVay wanted. The expectations of the Rams, they're like, we're in Super Bowl mode now. And it felt like Jared Goff at that time was actually holding them back. He seemed limited, not a great athlete, and his accuracy was kind of in question, especially in the big games, the playoff games. That's why McVay booted him out of LA. That's why they got rid of him. They went out and got Stafford. However, this is where Jared Goff's career explodes for me, is when he got to Detroit. My expectations for him when he got to Detroit is, like, I don't know how much longer he's going to be a starter in the NFL. Like, yikes. I couldn't have been more wrong, because he has exploded into a pure production machine. And when you talk about the term game manager, I don't think there's a higher ceiling for that level of play than the style at which Jared Goff has played over the last 2 years in Detroit. And people think game manager has like a negative connotation. Absolutely not. It's just a style of play. The style is don't make many turnovers and get the ball to the playmakers. And he does that perfectly, And he's also one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the NFL. And I still think he's only going to get better in Detroit. You look at the line they have, the weapons they have. And Jared Goff is just a good example of a guy that give him time to develop. Because early in his career didn't look good at all. And now I think he's easily a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. At number 2, we have Myles Garrett, the first overall pick in the 2017 draft, and immediately warranted being a number 1 overall pick. Like, he was instantly an incredible NFL player, and for the majority of his career has been a top 5, if not top 3 defensive player in the NFL. Some people think he's the best player on the defensive side of the football in the entire league. I would disagree with that, but you can't deny his impact as a sack machine. Just won Defensive Player of the Year this year and has been one of the biggest wrecking ball forces in the NFL ever since he stepped into the league. I think is going to easily be a Hall of Famer, and I think he, out of like most of the guys on this list, really warranted being a number 1 overall pick because the immediate impact he had. Like we talked about, some of these other guys, it took a long time for them to really find their footing. Myles Garrett walked in as already a Pro Bowl level talent in the NFL and has just built on that ever since, being one of the most destructive forces in the league. And the best number 1 overall pick of the last 10 years to me is Joe Burrow, the first overall pick in the 2020 draft. Didn't have a draft day picture, so I used this where he won the Natty. But I don't think, like I said, I haven't been watching football that long. I started in like 2015, 16. I don't think I've ever seen a player change the culture and trajectory of a franchise like Joe Burrow did with the Bengals. Like, think about that franchise before he got there. They were a perennial disaster, like literally a laughingstock in the NFL. Then he gets there. Year one, his rookie year, he got injured midway through. But year two, they got to the freaking Super Bowl. Year three, they went to the AFC Championship game. Like, they have been a legit contender ever since he's gotten there. And I think he's the second best quarterback in the NFL behind Patrick Mahomes. He's beaten Josh Allen in a playoff game in Buffalo. He's one of two players to beat Patrick Mahomes in a playoff game, the other guy being Tom Brady. Like, I think the poise he brings, like playing already like he's a 12-year veteran, I don't think, there's only one guy right now I think is better in the NFL than him, and that is Patrick Mahomes. Joe Burrow, I think, like I said, he's the only active quarterback to beat Mahomes in a playoff game. He's been to a Super Bowl. Like, he's incredible. So that's been my list. Make sure you let me know down in the comments what your list would be. If you are interested in checking out the version I did of the NBA where I ranked the last 10 number one overall picks for that, like I said earlier, there will be a link to the description. If you made it this far, really appreciate you giving it a listen. Please like and subscribe.